Today, we're kicking off an extraordinary series that ties into our opulent thinking for opulent opportunities theme that will empower you and inspire you to unlock your true desires and reach new heights of success, fulfillment, and purpose. In this series, we're taking lessons and insights from Ray Kroc, the quote-unquote founder of the McDonald's franchise. And here's a quote from Ray Kroc. He says, "Look after the customer and the business will take care of itself." So think about how you can apply this in your life today. We're looking at how Ray Kroc was obsessed with consistency. Whether it was the size of fries or the cleanliness of the bathrooms, he ensured that every McDonald's experience was the same. This episode covers how attention to detail and strong systems can be your business's backbone. Welcome back, my brilliant listeners, to another episode of the Brilliant Professor-ish podcast, where we talk about life unscripted on so many different levels. I'm your host, Dr. V, your brilliant solutionist and college professor turned life professor-ish. Remember, if you like this vibe, be sure to share and subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit that notification bell, and leave your comments and thoughts below. We love hearing from our amazing community of viewers and listeners, so let's ignite a conversation and inspire each other to join the movement of helping brilliant people bankrupt 1 billion barrier plots by moving from resume to reinvention to remarkable, so that they can live a life poured out above ground before all of that brilliance goes underground. Check out the corresponding blog posts and show notes for highlights, and that information will be down in the description box below. So let's get into it, and we're going to talk about mindset. So this is how you have an obsessive attention to detail, and it starts with mindset. This phrase gets thrown around a lot, just like the word action we discussed in a previous episode. So let's define what mindset is. So one definition says that it is the established set of attitudes held by someone. And an attitude is a settled way of thinking or feeling about someone or something, typically one that is reflected in a person's behavior. So overall, mindset is a habitual or characteristic mental way of thinking or feeling about something that's reflected in your behavior, which determines how you will interpret and respond to situations. Yes, that was a mouthful. Ray Kroc was meticulous about maintaining standards and consistency across all McDonald's franchises. He saw the importance of the system and embodied efficiency and all of those other traits that came along with what was needed for the franchise model to work. He obsessed over uniformity, whether it was the taste of the food, the customer service, or the cleanliness of the restaurant. So I have a question for you. What are you obsessed with, and does your attitude or behaviors reflect that? So we're going to talk about how this being obsessive relates to leadership as a role. Ray Kroc's leadership was based on accountability and setting high standards for others to follow. So let's define these words so we're not overlooking things because we think we already know what they mean. Accountability means an obligation or willingness to accept responsibility or to account for one's actions. High standards are defined as a set of criteria, principles, or expectations that are set at a level of excellence or quality that is considered to be superior or above average. So when you put those together, now you can understand what it means to be a leader as it relates to accountability and high standards. Ray Kroc had a strict expectation for compliance with his rules, and while some may have seen him as controlling, this attention to detail ensured that the McDonald's name or brand became a trusted brand and franchise model. So, as the leader of your life, what high standards have you established, and how are you first holding yourself accountable to follow them? Ray learned the system and owned the system before he launched it. So many times I've seen people wanting to use models and frameworks they've learned, but they never took ownership of them, meaning they didn't obsessively apply it to their own lives before trying to get people to buy in. And this extends well beyond the business. This goes into your career and your life as well. So how does personal mastery show up and when you are becoming obsessive with the details? Ray Kroc's perfectionism, coupled with an unyielding focus on quality control, exemplifies personal mastery. He believed in controlling every aspect of the business to ensure long-term success. While there can be an unhealthy relationship with perfectionism, I believe it serves a purpose at times. One definition says that perfectionism as a characteristic trait means striving for flawlessness and setting exceedingly high standards for performance, accompanied by tendencies for overly critical evaluations. Now, when you have a proven system, you do need to maintain integrity of the product or framework. You do need to be overly critical at times. This is why there are entire companies built on quality control and quality assurance. So a little bit of perfectionism isn't that bad. Just make sure you don't have an unhealthy relationship with it. So let's break this down even more. So when we really get into obsessing over the details, we have to use systems thinking. And systems are the backbone of any scalability, or any form of scalability, I should say. This is different from general growth. Scaling is about growing without being hampered by current structure or resources. That is why it's important to understand systems. A definition of systems thinking is a way to see patterns and interrelationships rather than static snapshots. It can also help you recognize that there are often multiple ways to intervene in a problem and that some interventions may not be popular. McDonald's is a great example of how consistent, repeatable systems were the key to their success. Ray Kroc was obsessed with creating a uniform, predictable experience for every customer. I heard some business people point out the fact that one of the largest companies in the world is run by teenagers for the most part because of its systems, and it's the systems that do the work. And if you've been to a Chick-fil-A recently, you've seen that they follow this model as well. Your life, career, and business can scale to new heights by noticing what's already working together rather than looking at everything in isolation. So let's talk more about the McDonald's system. Ray Kroc engineered the operations of McDonald's to be foolproof, from burger sizes, fry times, even the kitchen layouts. Every detail was standardized. Ray understood that scalability required precision. So, what is engineering? An engineered system. We're going to define that. It is a composite of people, products, services, information, and processes, and possibly natural components that provides a capability that satisfies a stated customer need or objective. And so putting that all together, we're just learning how things work together, pretty much, just learning how they work together and using them accordingly. So with that being said, how have you currently engineered your life? I mentioned this person before, but I've watched Tracy Hensel back in the day on YouTube, and I loved how she systematized and engineered her life while being a mother of five, a wife, a business owner, and an influencer. Some things may seem ridiculous that she does. Like one example was she lays out all of her coffee mugs and puts her little stevia packets in them. She has 7 different coffee mugs for every day of the week. So she jokes about it. She says, I know it seems ridiculous, but it keeps her on a tight system, and she's engineered that way because she's optimizing every single time. And she says this, even if it looks ridiculous, it works for her, and she always gets the outcomes that she wants. Again, you have to have a level of obsession with details if you want to ensure that the system is doing the work and phasing you out of a job in a way. I also got that from her when, she talks a lot about parenting, and she engineers systems to optimize her parenting. And she realized that her role was to phase herself out of a job because she was raising self-sufficient adults. So you may have your own thoughts about that, but just look at, the outcomes, all right? So why do the details matter in the first place? Well, going back to Ray Kroc, he wasn't just focused on the big picture. He knew that even small details could affect the customer experience. Whether it was packaging or the how the restaurant was laid out, every detail was an opportunity to perfect the system. And I believe so many people get caught up in the big picture or in the dreamer phase that they forget to focus on the day-to-day operations. It's great to aim for the CEO position, become a real estate mogul, or insert your big vision here, but when you haven't accomplished those milestones, you have to look at the details of what you've been doing every single day. This is why the excitement of vision parties often wear off. So then you have to think about balancing innovation and consistency. And this is where you really get into under the need for flexibility and innovation. And Ray, he didn't stifle creativity. Whenever someone had an idea and if it made like not always like dollar cents, but he could see what the end goal could be. He always allowed the franchisees an opportunity to expand and improve the model. One example was to cut down refrigeration costs with having real ice cream for the milkshakes. And while we love all natural products, he noticed that the profits were bleeding out. So one of the early franchisees introduced the milkshake drinks, a mixed drink, and that saved profits and it still tastes great. Now, they did eventually add real cream back into it, but that was just one example of being flexible and looking at a way to improve a system at scale without cutting into profits and resources and limiting the customer experience. Another thing that is important to do is understanding the role of feedback in the systems. So, how did Ray continuously improve these systems? He did this by establishing mechanisms for constant feedback and improvement. And this can be translated into how you, as a business owner or even the CEO of your life, can leverage feedback to refine your processes. So this doesn't mean that people can just tell you what to do and you follow the wind or things like that. But when you're doing things that are impacting other people, you look at the feedback as, are you getting the results? Are they acting the way you want them to act? Are they treating you the way that you want to be treated? Bottom line, are you getting your results? And if it's a yes, then you look for ways to continue going down that direction. If it's a no, then you ask them, well, what can be better? And, of course, you tailor this to whatever experience that you have, but you do have to constantly refine the process without being in your feelings. Because remember, they're not rating you per se, they're rating the system. So it's the system that gets the feedback. So you can take yourself out of that equation. And that's one way to phase yourself out of a job without taking things so personally. So building systems, that's how when we get to building systems for scalability, of course, there are people like true business experts who talk about systemization, but I want you to really understand the difference between growth and scale. And I got that from Dan Locke. And you can apply that in your career or in your life. If you're so overwhelmed and burned out, you're looking at trying to grow, and you're burning through resources, you're burning through money, you're burning through your energy. So now you need to step back and say, well, how can this be automated or who can I delegate this to? But even when you're delegating, you still want to make sure that the people are not coming back to you to check. You should have SOPs, and you can have SOPs for every single area of your life. And I didn't know that, right? I thought like you had to have SOPs. That was just only a business thing. But when I look back over my career as a college professor, I had SOPs to where I ran that ship, like it was on autopilot, and I was able to show up and get down to, the real reason why I wanted to interact with my students than just giving them, just information. The information was important, but I learned how to systematize that so that I didn't have to do that role. That role could be taken care of, and then I can get down to the deep work that, technology couldn't provide them, or they couldn't just look something up in a book or on the internet. You can do the same thing in your relationships, your health and wellness, your finances, your creativity. Anything can be systematized, and you're looking for ways to scale it without burning through those resources that I mentioned. And so now we're going to talk about how does this look, right? How does this look in real life? There are 3 action steps that I want you to consider. You can do 1, or all of them? So the first one is to audit your operations. Take a close look at your systems. And remember, systems, this is not just for business. You can look at your systems in your job. You can look at the systems in your household. You can look at, the systems for yourself, your weight, your finance, some of those things that I mentioned earlier. Where are you relying too much on guesswork or luck? So if is with your weight, are you just hoping, like, if I do this workout a few times a week, then the weight should just fall off? But do you have an overall system to know for sure that you will get the results that you desire? Make sure that you're not just focusing on guessing, or that if you did get results, it wasn't just pure luck. And be sure to implement a clear, repeatable process. Document what you do. I learned that, especially as a researcher, when I was getting my doctorate degree. The whole point of the dissertation was a practice in research. We had to document, and we all had these research journals to make sure that our studies could be replicated, right? And if they had any limitations, there was a record of that, So why don't we apply the same for, the multiple areas of our lives? The second thing is to think about, now I'm going to say customer journey because we were talking about entrepreneurial, mind shifts, but you can just do anybody's experience. So think of people who are interacting with you, clients, customers, companions, and things like that. So what is their experience with you, with your product or your service, or just who you are as a human being? What are the touch points that could use more refinement and consistency? So yes, it's easy to point this out in business. We can figure out those touch points, but we also want to make sure that we're doing these things in our lives. If you're focused on how to building better family relationships, then you start looking at what touch points could I do to that could be refined or be more consistent. Do you set up a text schedule? Do you set up, automated video calls? And you may seem like, oh, well, that's too in person, but it's not. You can just test it out and see how that works. Like, send quick little messages, and you can record them all on one day and schedule them. And then when your friends or family or whomever you want to reach out to, when they have time, they can respond back to you versus you keeping it in your brain. Okay, let me get back focused. Feedback loops. So establish a feedback loop that allows your customers or your team, and your team, again, could be at your job or within your community, family dynamics, or whatever. And so that allow them to point out the areas of improvement without fear of repercussion. This is why it's important to focus on the system that you are developing, so that they are giving feedback to the system and not to you directly. All right. So as we conclude, let me know which step you're going to focus on, and be sure to put a start date and end date down below. And I trust that you enjoyed this episode, which is part of Mastering the Entrepreneur Mindset Lessons from Ray Kroc series, where we discuss obsessive attention to detail and why systems matter. Be sure to stay tuned for our next episode, where we will discuss calculated risk-taking, balancing caution, and bold moves. Remember, it is my hope that something I said provided value, challenged your thinking, or made you say, Let me know your thoughts below so we can turn this monologue into a dialogue, and I can't wait to hear from you. Keep living life unscripted. And in case you forgot what that means, it means to stop following the path that others have laid out for you, and remember that your unique spark is the igniter to a wildfire of genius that cannot be extinguished. So until next time, I will see you on the other side.